How you doing, folks? You're watching another very candid episode of Onward with Onrie. I'm your host, Onrie Kompan. And as I'm recording this, we're about 4 days away from the end of our Kickstarter campaign for SOON SHIN Hunter and Destroyer. We're on the cusp right now of reaching $5,000, which is our second stretch goal, which is it's phenomenal. I can't believe we've gotten this far. And I just wanted to share some of my thoughts with you guys today and some of the things that I've learned throughout this incredible experience. And I'll be reflecting on it much more after the campaign is over on the show. But until then, this is just some things that I felt so compelled to share with you towards the end of this campaign that I wanted to take some time out of my schedule this week to be here with you guys. So, going through this Kickstarter campaign is, of course, forced me to kind of reflect on where the series started and where it is today. And the concept of making SOON SHIN into a comic book actually occurred to me about 12 years ago. And after I had the idea of making this into a comic, the first thing I did was not going right. That was the last thing I ended up doing, actually. I realized that if I wanted to do this, and I wanted to do it right, the first thing I would need to do is research. And I spent about 2 years fully dedicating myself just to that, just to research. And not just research of the history of SOON SHIN, but studying different trends in comic books. And looking at what makes good comics. Because a couple years before I came up with the idea of making SOON SHIN into a comic, I had another comic book series that I released independently that didn't do so well. I wasn't really happy with the results. I ended up remaking the same comic 3 times, and I wasn't happy any time I was putting it out there. And it's not that I wasn't invested in the idea. I was very invested in the idea, but I just don't think that I saw much potential in turning it into something big. Now, if I was determined to see this thing happen, I could have. But I really wanted to set myself apart. I really wanted to stand out. And when I discovered the story of SOON SHIN, I felt so much, I felt like this piece of myself had been reignited. And the reason, why would I feel like this about some Korean admiral? Well, for those of you that don't know, I used to study Taekwondo when I was younger, and I took it very seriously. And I actually traveled to Korea 1 year to go and train out there, and while I was in high school. And I took it very seriously. I was training at one point twice a day. I was actually sleeping over at my school and waking up in the morning at like 5 a.m., training till 6, and then going about my day, and then coming back at night to train for another 2 hours. And I never really had much potential as a fighter, per se. I'm not a very aggressive person. But I always appreciated what went into the sport of Taekwondo. And when I say Taekwondo, I'm not talking about the traditional form of Taekwondo. I'm talking about Olympic sparring, which is sort of like boxing, but with kicking. And it was something I took very seriously for a while. And it really kind of got me through high school. Everybody else was, I always, for some reason, find a way to stand out in other ways or do things that everybody else is not doing. And this was my high school sport. And I was very committed to it. And once I left high school, I kind of realized, well, I don't really feel good when I get into a ring to fight with somebody. I don't know if I'll ever feel that way. And I'm not sure that I can make a career out of doing Taekwondo for the rest of my life. So eventually I kind of stopped doing it altogether. And it was such an important part of my life because I love Korean culture. I mean, it was embedded in me. And that part of me was just sort of like, put to the side for so many years. So when I discovered the story of SOON SHIN and what he managed to achieve, it touched on so many It touched me on so many levels for a couple reasons. I'm also Jewish, and historically speaking, Jewish people really don't have many historical figures that really stood against great odds and survived. Most of them ended up dying. I mean, excluding Moses, of course, but you know, most of them end up being martyrs and end up not actually able to save people. I mean, Jewish people in general have, you know, gone through extreme adversity, and there's a definite correlation between what Jewish culture and Korean culture, because I think Koreans have gone through very similar adversity, and that's what allowed me to connect to SOON SHIN so much. And when I discovered this story of this magnanimous hero who, you know, defeated the Japanese, the samurai, you know, the baddest motherfuckers in the galaxy, just completely annihilated them, man, it really inspired me. And when I first discovered this story, was actually through a K-drama of all things. And I remember getting these DVD sets, and they were just so, you know, the packaging on them was just so perfect. I mean, you'd open it up, and I had no idea what the fuck I was about to get into. So I had a roommate, and he told me, you know, pick up these DVDs. They're really great. Each box set cost like $100. So I spent like $200. I was like, fuck it. You know, I had a good job. It was paying me. I didn't care. You know, $200, take it. And I waited a couple weeks, and all of a sudden I get these two boxes, and inside of them were, you know, the DVDs, of course. But inside each DVD was maps and all kinds of stuff. It was all written in Korean. I had no idea what the fuck it was. I just knew that the story sounded interesting because the way my roommate was telling me, it was about this dude who never was defeated in battle. He actually existed, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I gotta fucking see this. And I started watching the show, and it was like this part of me that I thought was no longer existent just came back to life. And, you know, from there it was just, you know, what that show taught me, not just from a standpoint of how great it was produced, but how it was produced, made me realize that if I was going to do a comic about this historical figure, I had to know my shit. I had, the bar was set here, and I had to be up here. And I didn't have the experience. I mean, I had done one other comic, and it was not very good. And, you know, now, once I decided that I was going to do this, I had to make sure that I did it right. And it took a long time, and there was a lot of rejection. There was a lot of self-doubt. I got a story for you guys. So in 2007, about a year after I had committed myself to doing this and was in the middle of my research, I remember one evening I came to my parents' house for dinner, and I was driving with my father. He was taking me back to the train station. And as we were driving, he told me that he really doesn't think I should be wasting my time working on this comic book series. And he was coming from a very good place. He wasn't trying to be like, you suck, I hate you. You know, my father, I have so much respect for my father that that when he said this to me, it really hurt me, not because he was trying to put me down, but because I knew that he was coming from a good place, and that maybe he was right. What if he was right? What if I was wasting my time with this? And, you know, fortunately I had other people around me who were encouraging, like my sister, who told me, you know, don't listen to Dad. Dad loves you, but, you know, sometimes he's Dad, you know, and all our parents can be like that. They all come from a good place, you know, when they mean well, and, you know, it's up to you to kind of make of it what you will. But I remember my dad was telling me it was not really going to go, he didn't think it was going to go anywhere. He was certain of it, as a matter of fact. And I think he regretted telling me that, of course, because, you know, a couple days later he just kind of, you know, he started to take a more encouraging tone with me. But, you know, how could I blame him? I mean, you know, my father came from a country where you had to take whatever work you could find. And he comes to America with nothing, doesn't even know the language, learns the language, builds a business for himself, and, you know, puts me through college, puts my sister through college, and everything, and, you know, built this really wonderful life for himself. And here's his son saying he wants to work in comics full time. And of course he's concerned. I mean, this could have gone so many different ways. And of course, I took on a lot of debt, which I'm still paying off till this day. But where it's gotten me is something I'm very pleased with, you know. So, I mean, you know, fortunately I was able to kind of overcome that. But sometimes you're going to go through that in life, where you're going to be doing something and someone you really care about, who really wants the best for you, is going to tell you what you don't want to hear because they care about you. And what they say to you, you have to decide how to take that and turn it around. And I'll tell you right now, my dad went from being my greatest skeptic to one of my greatest supporters. And it took a couple of years, but once he saw how stubborn I was about getting this fucking book out, he knew that I was committed. And now the success of this book cannot be disputed, period, because of the time that I put into it. And sometimes when you put more time into something, the results are not there immediately, because, you know, I think in general we all want to see very fast results, and we also want to put minimal effort into stuff in order to, you know, minimal effort, maximum results. You know, I think only a few people who have that skill are really good at that. Me, I'm not. I have to work hard in order to produce, you know, quality results. It's just, that's my curse, you know, or my, you know, one of my, how do you say it, drawbacks, whatever it is. But, you know, and that's sort of, you know, this is what this series has always been about. I mean, it's been an uphill battle from the get-go. I've always been outnumbered. This book got rejected by every single publisher. Diamond said that they can't carry this book because no retailers wanted to have it in their store. And yet this book is about to sell 90,000 copies. And when I look at, and when I look back on it, when I think about it, it's like, you know, sometimes the things that are occurring with this book almost feel like it's outgrown me. It's happening not because of me, but in spite of me. And it's really an amazing feeling. I remember when Kevin and I were in the final hours of New York Comic-Con a couple weeks ago, the books were flying off of the table so fast that I didn't believe that we were selling them, because it was like Kevin was like taking them and throwing them in the garbage or something, or hiding them somewhere so that I wouldn't see them. But no, they were selling. They were moving so fast that I couldn't even keep track of it. And it was a really amazing feeling. And you know, when you're doing something like Kickstarter, it's such a different thing, you know. And there's so many things that you need to consider while doing a Kickstarter campaign that I'm not sure if I did that. And I'll probably look back on it in retrospect and look at areas where I could have tweaked things or made them, you know, better than they could have been, so that the next time I do it, I have a stronger campaign. And I'm very happy with the results I've achieved with this book, or with this Kickstarter campaign, because honestly, we went out the gate with so many you know, challenges that was ridiculous. I launched this campaign on the same day of Baltimore Comic-Con, and I was trying to get as many pre-orders as I could in at this show. And on the first day of the show, I had completely forgotten all of my promotional content back at Kevin's house, because I was staying with him in Baltimore, and he was helping me out at the show. So, you know, we come to the convention. I don't have anything, and I'm like, all right, fuck it. You know, at least we have books here. We can sell books, and that's what we're here to do anyway. So, you know, we started selling books, and, you know, we didn't have a good day. That Friday was really tough, and I realized at that point that we would have to really pull off a miracle if we were going to sell out at the show. And Saturday was an incredible day. Saturday was such a good day that, you know, we had a good fighting chance of selling out on Sunday. And Sunday was a good day too. But towards the end of the show, it was just, things were dying down so much that there was just no way for us to pull out and pull out a victory here. And we left with like about 108 books, which should, you know, honestly, that wasn't very much. If you would have given us an extra 2 hours of time, we would have taken care of that, no problem. And as the show was closing, I wasn't upset that we didn't sell out. I was really pleased with the fact that, we were able to do this. I mean, Kevin and I worked our asses off to get to that point. And the campaign was off to a really quick start in the beginning. We raised like about $1,300 in the first day. We were already almost like 50% funded, and it felt great. And then things just went stagnant for the next 2 days. Saturday and Sunday, things just went like we didn't get any new pledges. I didn't know what was going on. I thought maybe the fact that I was at a convention was kind of slowing things down. I don't know, but after a certain point, I just kind of thought about it, and I was like, you know what? I just went out the gate, and I'm already almost halfway there. And once we completed Baltimore Comic-Con, Kevin and I were, I stayed with Kevin because the following week was New York Comic-Con. So Kevin and I drove up to New York from Baltimore. And while I was at Kevin's house, I was thinking about, the problems that I was facing with this campaign and how I was going to kind of overcome them. Because as I've mentioned many times on this show, every problem has a solution. It doesn't matter how difficult it is, and it doesn't matter if you can't figure it out right away. It has a solution. And you may not like the solution, or the solution may not work for you, or whatever the case is, but there is a solution to every problem. And in this case, it was just a matter of me being able to focus on the campaign. And sure enough, we were headed over to New York, and we were starting to see more pledges, and now we were only $1,500 away from being fully funded, right as we were taking on the 1,500 comic book battle. Is that a coincidence? I think not. But anyway, we went in and we focused on what we were in New York to do, which was to complete the 1,500 comic book battle. And we did it in record time, and went far beyond that. We sold about well over 1,600 books at this show, and it was an amazing experience. I mean, everything that I didn't sell in Baltimore, I was able to just get rid of it at New York Comic-Con in record time. It was really, it really made up for everything. And sometimes the lesson that I got from that is that sometimes when you don't succeed at something right away, it doesn't necessarily mean that you failed. It just means that success will find you at a later point. And it's all about how you perceive things and how you look at them. And I think it's really important to be positive, because people have no problems putting you down. And if you look like you can't do anything, you're not really inspiring much confidence in others to believe that you can do it. And you may not necessarily feel like you can do it. Like, to be honest with you, I'm not in the most confident state of mind right now, with where my Kickstarter is. It is what it is. I mean, I've had people cancel pledges, I've had people add on pledges, I'm in this realm of uncertainty right now. But it is what it is. And you know what? Overall, it's funded. I mean, unless everybody pulls out, which I don't see happening in the next few days. If anything, we're gonna go. I know that we'll get over $5,000 without a doubt. But how far above we'll go is, I'm not sure. I don't know. And for me, I think it's also important to show you guys, the audience, that I'm not just sitting behind closed. I'm not just sitting in front of the computer while this campaign is going and just constantly posting stuff. I am doing that when I'm not at conventions, but I think it's important to show all of you that I take this very seriously. I mean, I've devoted 12 years of my life to this book, and I plan on putting many more years into it because I believe in it that much. And the people that I've worked with on the series, they believe in it too. They've been working on it almost as long as I have. So it's a really this is really a project that I'm very prideful of, and I'm glad that we had a really good run on Kickstarter. And I have a feeling that this campaign is going to end very well. And I think it's just important when you're going through all this stuff to always stay confident and to put yourself in the best light that you possibly can. This weekend I'm doing Alamo City Comic-Con. I guess I'm making my final stand at the Alamo, and I have about 1,100 books that I'm bringing with me. I have absolutely no idea if I can sell through everything because the show hours kind of changed with this show, and at first they were saying Friday was going to go from 11 to 7, which would have given me about 8 hours of selling time, and the other days it was like 10 to 8 and 10 to 6 on Sunday or whatever. And this is what I do at conventions is not only a matter of how many people show up at a convention that I can pitch, but it's also about how much time there is to actually pitch at the show, because there's only so many books you can sell per hour and all this stuff. So I'm not sure if I can sell out, but you know what? I feel good because I'm going to go and do this show, and I'm going to give it my all. I'm going to do my very best, and whatever happens is whatever happens, and the same thing goes for this Kickstarter. And because I know that I will be successful no matter what, I'm not really worried about the results. And I think that's a good place to be. At least that's how I feel right now. We'll see what happens. But I think that's something that anyone who is looking to get into this field, you're always going to be faced with adversity. You're always going to be fighting battles, and it's important to get out there and just do your best and give it all you got. I mean, that's all you can do. And whatever happens, that's what happens. I was talking with my boxing coach last week, and he was telling me about how fighting in the squared circle, the ring in the boxing, when you fight, it's when you get in there, whether you win or lose, it really shows who you are. If you win, you're the better man. If you fight well, and you lose anyway, then you still gave it all you got. And what matters is what kind of character you bring to the ring, and what kind of how you leave. And for me, I want to go out showing the strength of this comic book series. It doesn't matter if we sell it at this point. In fact, it doesn't matter if we sell out at any other convention going forward. We've already proven that this book can, go toe to toe with, any mainstream book out there. And we're gonna sell millions of copies of this book one day. It'll happen. And as we go forward with this, it's just things are really gonna look up. And I'm looking forward to this campaign ending, because now I'll be able to focus on the creative part of this book, and that's something that is really important to me too, to be able to see how the story plays out, because honestly, Beck and I have no idea how it's going to play out yet. We're planning this scene by scene, and we're coming up with new stuff. We're looking for ways to surprise ourselves, even, so that when you're reading the book, you don't even see what's coming. And I think that's what makes for good comics. So we'll see how it goes. For those of you who haven't made your pledge yet, you can do so right now by clicking on the link below. There are still 4 days or 3 days, whatever, to make your pledge. Backing this series, you're not just buying into an independent comic book series that's being shoveled out there in front of you. You're buying into something that is made with all heart. All right, everybody on this book put their blood, sweat, and tears into this. And whether it's your thing or not, I can tell you without a measure of doubt that everybody was fully committed to giving you the best reading experience out there at this. All right? Okay, guys, I'll see you next week with a brand new episode. Until then, onward to victory.